Welcome, Snobs.
Welcome to Snobs, a podcast where we critique everything
because nothing is sacred.
And everything can be elevated and refined.
And nitpicked.
Yes. This is a show where we pick like a piece of media and we talk about it. Mm-hmm. Today we're going to talk about The Diplomat, a show on Netflix featuring Kerry Russell, ran by Deborah Kahn. Mm-hmm. Excellent show. Mm-hmm. But before we start, what were you a snob about this week?
You made me aware of my snobbery. We have purchased two different types of popcorn from Costco. Mm-hmm. The Boom Chicka Pop and the Lesser Evil Buddha coconut oil butter flavor, but no butter popcorn. And we have been faithful eaters of the Lesser Evil for a while. And the Boom Chicka Pop has a more kettle corn-like shape, but it's not as good as the Lesser Evil coconut oil, not butter flavoring. And the problem with the Lesser Evil Buddha popcorn thing is that the kernels feel very small. And so it feels like it takes in more salt. And it gets excruciatingly salty as you eat. And as the package goes stale, you have this like styrofoamy, really still excellent butter flavor, but texture-wise, really difficult. But this Boom Chicka Pop kettle corn-like thing walks this middle ground between not sweet enough and not salty enough, and no distinct flavor outside of this wishy-washy-ish
but the textures
flavor, but the texture is good.
So ideal texture would be Boom Chicka Pop texture plus butter flavor from the
Lesser Evil. And I understand that is really difficult to achieve because I have an air popper for the popcorn, and it feels like, depending on the batch of corn I purchase and how long that batch of corn stays in the pantry, the staleness of the popcorn changes no matter how much oil you add to it. And I don't fully understand at what stage can you produce the best popcorn.
Okay.
And from which kind of corn.
Oh, the sentence keeps going.
And from which kind of corn can you produce the Boom Chicka Pop texture so that you can flavor it like the Lesser Evil?
Do you think that the Boom Chicka Pop texture is a product of the fact that it's like sweeter and like there's like something related to the sugar?
I don't think so, because the Lesser Evil version also has a sweet version, which I'm assuming is the same kind of corn.
Sure. Because it's like the Boom Chicka Pop is the things that are like the popcorn in the large barrels.
Yeah.
Right? But then like the Lesser Evil is more like movie popcorn. Like movie theater popcorn.
Yeah. So that's corn.
Yeah. Very far from the subject of today's episode. As we mentioned, we watched The Diplomat this week. And it is a show we weren't sure if we were going to talk about on this show because we just kind of love the show. Mm-hmm. But we decided to, mainly because of the interesting relationship between the main character,
Kate Weiler, and her husband,
Paul Weiler, and Hal.
Hal Weiler.
Yeah, Hal Weiler. Call him Hal.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So I think we just have a couple of questions for us, because I think the thing that's really interesting is this show features gender as like a deep theme, but rarely says it out loud, right? Like she says it out loud every once in a while, but it isn't super heavy-handed, and yet how the two of them interact is so fascinating.
Like, spoiler alert, if you watch till the end, you get this feeling of the women have been engineering the power play throughout the show. You discover that towards the end. That is like the big, at the end of season 2, the big kind of cliffhanger of like, look what the women have done. Have orchestrated this whole time. But it is not this like, oh, look, women and like female power. It's not exactly explicit in that way.
It's a lot of the powerful women, like the chief of staff to the president is a black woman. And it feels like her entire job is to babysit this white man.
Who's the president.
Yeah. But it feels like she's kind of this assistant for a lot of it. But you realize that she's actually like
the kingmaker.
The kingmaker / a babysitter. And like the babysitter has more power than the baby.
Yep.
Right. Even though he has the title. So I think at the end of the pilot, there's this very interesting moment where Hal is talking to kind of Stuart, which is Kate's like second hand, like right hand man, and
Kate's babysitter.
Yeah. And Stuart figures out that Kate and Hal are getting divorced, but Stuart's job is to groom Kate to be the next vice president. And he says that Kate cannot become vice president if they get divorced. And the quote, and Stuart looks at Hal and goes, does she want you? Like, we don't know if she wants to be vice president, but does she want you? Because if she doesn't want you, she can't become vice president. And then Hal says, of course she wants me. She fucking loves me. You can't think about it too hard or else it'll break your heart. And I we rewatched this episode and I just have been thinking about it too hard. And I was like, I think it would be fun to start just being like, let's think about it hard. Why would it break your heart?
It feels like you should go first. It feels like you've been thinking about this more than I have. Like,
sure.
Yeah, how does it break your heart? How will it break your heart?
It breaks your heart because I believe that Hal is right. Well, so the first question is, do you think that she loves him?
I think this is like one of those questions where the word, like the caveat of this question is the word love is undefined, right? Like, what's love for Kate?
Yeah.
And in the sense of Kate is not leaving, loving. I'm not sure.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
Is not leaving, loving. I'm not sure. Like, I think those are different like things. I don't know. The answer is I don't know if Kate loves him. After watching the whole show, I still cannot say she loves him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
think she loves him.
I think she loves him. Right? And I think that his statement is only true
if Kate loves him.
Like that if you think about it too hard, it'll break your heart.
Yeah.
It's only true if she does love him.
Yeah.
Right? Because if she doesn't love him, like, who cares? Right?
I mean, the only reason anyone would care is, like, I don't think this is the thing of the show. It's not quite. But like, if she doesn't love him and she's staying to kind of be vice president.
Sure.
Right? Like, I don't know. I don't think that is like entirely it. It's like this, for me, it's like this complex gray area between I love him, maybe I want to be vice president. Like, what do I do? Like, it feels kind of like career and personal relationship kind of trapped in that situation.
Well, I think that his statement is about the fact that they've agreed to get divorced, but he still believes that she loves him.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the heartbreaking piece, right? That whatever has transpired, again, this is said in the pilot, we only see them interacting for one episode, right? But like, whatever that has transpired over the course of their 10-year-long relationship has made her choose herself, but not the part of herself that loves him. You know?
Yeah.
And that does sound heartbreaking.
Okay. Does he love her?
He definitely loves her.
Why? How?
Because he can't get a boner for anyone else.
Oh,
right. Yeah, like he definitely loves her. And I think that the really difficult portion of this is that his love of her does not determine how he treats her.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that
is the really brutal piece, which is again exemplified the heartbreaking other side of the coin, because his love for her doesn't mean that he will defer to her, you know, or in the past before the show starts.
Yeah.
He's made a bunch of choices that has tortured her to the point that she wants to leave.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the other heartbreaking side, that he doesn't treat her differently. Even though he does, he is able to say, there's no doubt in the show that he thinks he loves her, that she thinks he loves her, and but he still does all sorts of bullshit to her.
Yeah. I think the heartbreaking thing for me, if I think too hard about it, is that there is one person, Hal, in this relationship, not even reluctant, but like knows exactly what he can get away with, and like really pushes that as his life choice every day. Right? Like, I know, it's like Hal's like, I know that I can get away with pretty much everything on both, like in his career internationally, playing with fire in his marriage. And he knows that there is no limit. In some ways, Kate has no boundaries regarding what he can break. And that is the heartbreaking part, in which it's like he has created the dynamic in which it feels like Kate doesn't even have time or energy or capacity to build and set new boundaries for herself, because she's so busy trying to mend whatever damage Hal is causing all around her. She's just trying to put out fire. And that's the heartbreaking part.
That mixes her job with
her personal life.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting because she's going around being an ambassador. Like, what's an ambassador? It's like a spokesperson, a negotiator for setting boundaries for the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Setting boundaries for this PM, like for this British PM, setting boundaries for this American president who is a baby and that needs babysitting. And all of her energy is, it feels like there's no more of her to ambassador, to do ambassador work in her own marriage, you know? Because and then Hal keeps messing up everything in her work, so it's just a shit show.
Yeah. But also weirdly, like, the brutal part about Hal is that he's like, yeah, the chaos that follows me.
The reigns around
me. Yeah, that reigns around me. Mm-hmm. Right? And he understands that. Mm-hmm. And yet he still does it because he thinks it's the right move. Mm-hmm. And
he can't help himself.
Yeah, he can't help himself. But the secondarily brutal part, right, is that, yeah, the secondarily brutal part is that sometimes he's right. You know? Right? Like, you know, when in episode 2 or 3, it like finally Hal's first wave of meddling gets revealed to everybody, right? And to everyone close in the inner circle of decision makers, right? And then Kate tells the story that about how Hal commandeers this plane to go meet with the Taliban, and half the Pentagon tells the story of Hal being an epic hero, and then the other half of the Pentagon tells the story about the 300 Afghanis who helped the U.S. that didn't get to leave because of him, right? And there's a part of the thing of being like, yeah, Hal might have needed, like, he did go talk to the Taliban and held off the Taliban from taking over the city for one extra day for some more people to leave, right? There's an effect there, you know, like he is, like, so often he's weirdly never punished or proven wrong, right?
Yeah. Feels very like just the amount of shit men can get away with in power. Like,
sure.
That's just like.
Would you like to ask your question then?
Oh, yes. My question was, it's interesting because the show portrays this they're both Ambassador Weilers, right? And when Hal goes to...
Right, he was an ambassador first in Kabul.
Yeah.
And she was his...
But, you know, when the media portrays them, they're both Ambassador Weiler. And so when he goes to London to kind of, you know, help her get her feet on the ground, the way the show calls it, he shows up at this funeral, and then the newspaper comes out and it's like, you know, Ambassador Weiler of the Hal, of the husband, Ambassador Weiler's first day at the job, blah, 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 blah. And it's just the presumption of like, this is the man doing the job, and so on and so forth. And what's interesting with that explicitness of like, they're both Ambassador Weilers is that there's a very distinct treatment of Ambassador Weiler. And there's this interesting thing where the woman, Kate, right, has this like powerhouse type energy in the show, and yet they are treated so differently. And, you know, how does that happen? How are they treated differently? How does the show depict that?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly captured in when they're trying to convince her to be vice president, and the chief of staff of the president is like trying to convince her to be vice president, and she goes, I asked 8 people who they would grab for the apocalypse. 5 of them said you, right? Like said Kate. And I think that statement perfectly encapsulates her positionality because her power comes from pure capableness. But in the end, she is not the person grabbing someone. She is not the person building the team for the apocalypse. She is the person being grabbed for the apocalypse.
Her husband is part of the team building someone for the apocalypse.
Yeah. He's already in the bunker.
Yeah. And
he picks her. You know.
Yeah.
I think that's like quite a.
It strikes me. So in the show, Kate very famously has really messy hair, right? Like I think they actually spend quite a bit of time to get her hair oily and
in
intentionally.
Netflix's hair and makeup spending a lot of time making Kerry Russell's hair look like trash.
Yes, just like oily and like just messy, asymmetric, and just kind of everywhere. And she's just has a black suit and tie, and that's like not suit and tie, black suit, and she just doesn't want to change into anything else, and that's a whole thing. And those are, the external portrayals of what a man does in her position, right? Like a man would not have to worry about their hair as much, can wear just a black suit everywhere. Like in the show, people keep asking her, "You're gonna go change? Like you're going to the embassy? Are you gonna go change?
Do you want to wear a better blouse? Would some color be nice,
right?" And all of this stuff, and she's functioning in her mind as Ambassador Weiler with a dick, right? She is functioning just like, I can go with a black suit. I'm gonna go still with this black suit. I just have 2 black suits and a burqa, right? Like that's all I have packed. And everything in the show is telling her not to do that. That's like one basic aspect. But even all of her kind of powerhouse acting and like taking reins and trying to manage things, it all feels like trying to babysit these men who are butthurt over something and like need to be talked down from starting a war, right? Like that's what it feels like to watch her. Like oddly enough, it doesn't feel that different from watching a housewife managing like people fighting in the household, right? But it's just not out. It's outside of the kitchen, and like when you see Hal, he's just up with his feet on some desk that somebody fucked at. He's just reading a newspaper. He's like chilling in the embassy and doing some shit, giving a call that causes all this trouble, and then Kate has to then go fix everything. And like, she just is, it's like the women end up doing the domestic labor, even in an embassy. And that's fascinating. Like, that portrayal is fascinating.
Yeah, and it's very fun because Hal, when the show starts, is only the spouse, right? He keeps calling himself the wife, right? And yet he isn't playing the role of the wife of the diplomat who kind of just stays out of the business
and serves the menu.
Yeah. Instead, he becomes, the memory book is so funny.
Yeah.
But instead, he is able to both be the man without the title that can be restricted, right? And be the wife where nothing is expected of him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
While she is both restricted by the title and restricted by the expectations
of like
for you
being her husband's wife.
Yeah. I had a question, which is just how do they treat the position, like their role as ambassador differently?
It feels like, right, like the first thing Kate says is, it doesn't hurt anyone ever to go on a call listening into the PM and the president, I think, talk and not say anything, right? Hal is like, you gotta talk, you gotta like assert yourself and make, do something during that call, right?
Yeah, she's just like, spend the first few weeks just sitting and listening.
Yeah. And it feels like the confidence of the mediocre white man is great. And the ability to assert oneself in any situation has no consequence, right? Like the actual thing is, if Kate does that, it will have consequence, right? Like Kate actually can't do that. As much as she is dressed in a black suit, as dirty as her hair is, as much as she's trying to act like Ambassador Weiler, the man, she can't get away with doing what Hal does. And Hal can just get away with shit. So yes, you assert yourself. You leave, crumble things, along the way. You destroy things. You leave 300 people in Afghanistan or whatever. And like, you leave the ruins, right?
Yeah.
And like, Kate will lose her job. Like, that's the difference, right? Like, and so like, how do they treat their job differently? One knows that on day one, she was going to lose her job, right? The Secretary of State wanted to get rid of her. And Hal doesn't even have a job and knows that he can't be gotten rid of.
Well, that's not exactly true, because Hal can't get a job because of how he's pissed off people.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. But he also
while
he assigns himself a job.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know how. Yeah, like,
it's like the gall.
Yeah.
Or like the hubris to just be like, I'm gonna go do some stuff.
Yeah. Like, that's a thing that I think women don't know how to do very well, and like, Hal should teach a class on this, and all women should take it, on how to make up a job for yourself and do it.
Yeah.
And just weasel your way into things.
Yeah.
But
I think you get called a bitch if you're a woman if you do that, right? Like,
but you get called a bitch either way.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, but and that's the thing, right? It's like, Hal does this thing. He gets called by the Pentagon. Half of them call him an epic hero. Half of them want him to take accountability. And I think for a woman, the likelihood is that all of that is just called bitch.
Sure. Or it's only that the other women, or a percentage of the women, can recognize
a percentage.
Yeah, because a good amount of the other
Hillary.
Yeah, a bunch of the women will also hate her.
Yep.
So when we first started watching this relationship between the two of them, you immediately was like, you were like very quick to be like, this is an emotionally, or just this is an abusive relationship. Walk me through like, how, why?
I think when a woman has to convince all of her coworkers of what Hal is capable of, and you see the disbelief in their eyes repeatedly, and they don't act like she is believed. That's like one of the sure signs that this is, for me, an abusive relationship, right? Like if you don't look at the outward things, then it's like this person is distinctly stepping over her boundaries, not telling her things in a way that will compromise her job, right? And really put her in serious trouble. And when questioned if he meddled, he tells like these partial truths that are not exactly lying, but are also not exactly like, it is a crazy making relationship where Kate knows for a fact that the meddling has happened, and Kate can't convince anyone around her that it is happening. And that is the feeling of being in an abusive relationship. Just like, you just have to believe me, and no one will believe you. Yeah. And like none of her coworkers believe her.
Yeah, she's immediately perceived as someone who is
jealous,
or is like micromanaging, right?
And all of her kind of defenses just get this. It's like the abuser, the victim has to acquire all of the blame of the abuser, right? Because the accusation of like, oh, Kate wants the spotlight, and Kate's like jealous of her husband still having the spotlight on him, right? But that's actually, she's getting accused for what Hal is doing. Hal is jealous of Kate in the spotlight. Hal wants the spotlight. Hal is doing everything he can to be in the spotlight. Right. And the abuser faces zero fucking consequences for whatever the fuck he does, right? And he is still portrayed like, even though he's like, like he can't get a job. That's true. He can't get a job. People won't give him a job because a lot of people in Washington hate him. His word is still taken, like among, like you say it to the president, and immediately they're like, this is a confidential source. And that kind of level of reputation that he can harness in public to deny anything that he does.
Yeah, in that scene where they reveal that Hal's the one who got kidnapped, and the back channels through Iran and stuff. And where she goes, instead of being like, Hal was kidnapped, she just goes, Hal, and then Hal explains it. Where she understands that there is weight to when he says it.
Speaks something.
Yeah. Which is also terrifying.
Yeah, it's like, surprising that I said it was abusive.
Because, again, I think it's what you were saying earlier, which was, like, on the surface, she's the one with the power, right? He's like, he seems just like a little, like, he's a little naughty boy, right?
Sure.
Like, in the power, like, the titles and the things, right?
Yeah.
And because, again, it's like the brutal part of it. It's like, it's only through his meddling that they find out that, like, Iran, like, they get through a fucked way of him interacting with Iran, do they get a very solid lead that the, like, culprit of this explosion isn't Iran, right? And so, like, you're like,
does he get credit?
Yeah, the man delivers results in this weird fucking way.
Yeah.
And so, like, as a man, I'm like, look, he helped, right? Like, again, it's like the principle of the matter of, like, that's not how it's done.
Yeah, that's not how relationships work.
Yeah. That's not how relationships work.
Yeah.
Right, but then the blurring, right, where it's like I'm talking about results in the diplomatic job.
Sure.
Right?
Which she does not have.
Yeah. Which she does not have. But then we're also talking about its effect on their personal relationship. You know?
I want to look up what's the etymology of ambassador.
Sure.
Ambassador etymology. It means to communicate, to send a message, to send an envoy. To communicate, to send a message, to send an envoy. And like, in some ways, I mean, okay, why is that that feels so wrong to hear as a woman, of like, he delivered results, right? Like, it feels so wrong because I'm trying to ask myself why. It feels so wrong because she has the job, because she has agency that was denied her, and it puts her job at jeopardy.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure,
and he repeatedly does that. And so it's like they find out it's not Iran. Like, presumably they can find out that it's not Iran eventually. Right? Iran, like, this is actually the feeling I have. It's like the narcissistic abusers thing of making everyone around them feel like they alone have the answer to deliver this result that without them could not have happened.
Yeah.
Whereas the way that the show progressed, you know, Iran would have communicated somehow.
Yeah, like through the proper channels or through her doing her job. If she is so good at her job.
Yeah. She doesn't get to show us, in some ways, how good she is at her job, because she's so busy trying to have one, because her husband keeps trying to take it away from her.
Yeah.
Right? And like, that's the thing.
Can he genuinely be trying to help?
I think, you know, like the thing that in Tell Them You Love Me, the mom is like, in his wicked mind, her wicked mind, she thinks she's doing. I think that in his wicked mind, he thinks he's helping.
Sure.
I mean, that is what, like, kind of abusers think. Like, they believe that is helping, right? And it's like, what's the goal here? The goal is that the marriage and this relationship can be sacrificed and tread over at all costs to whatever Hal thinks is the priority of the moment.
Sure.
Like, it, in some ways, it doesn't matter. I think this is it. It doesn't matter if Kate is the ambassador or not. Like, Kate, in some ways, doesn't need to be there. Hal just Hal wants to do what Hal does, right? Like, it's like,
I don't know if that's 100% true.
Like, she doesn't need to. It doesn't matter to him that she has this job and she has a job to do.
Yeah. Again, he like, the fact that he affects her doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Do you feel like the moment when she punches him, so she kind of gets to the limit and she discovers that they've been setting her up to try to be vice president, and she corners him in a bush, and then she says that, when you told me to call our attorney
to get a divorce,
did you think we were going to get a divorce? Did you think it was over? And Hal says no. And then she starts like hitting him and was like, this marriage is killing me. Does that anger feel justified to you? Do you understand her anger?
I understand her anger. I understand that it feels I understand her anger. Like, I understand it. I can see how that anger is justified. I don't think she's like being unreasonable.
Mm.
I also weirdly understand what he's thinking to be like, he can be like, yeah, I don't think it's over. But in this current moment, we are talking about it like it is, right? And of course, I think the hard part is that, like, he can't compartmentalize. Like, there's no way for him to compartmentalize like that, truly, right? But, like, men think that they can, right? He thinks that he can both be like, yeah, I don't think it's over, but, like, that's not affecting my actions, right? She's like, you're crying and snot and all of that. And that's like, I believe that he was crying and feeling these things and it wasn't a manipulation, right? But then he's also just like, yeah, it might not be over, right? Because it's also like, it's also the thing where he doesn't want it to be over, right? Like that's also, he's not being like, yes, I agree with you that this relationship doesn't work, right? She wants to leave him, and he's just like, yeah, okay, we can break up. You're telling me how bad it is for you, or whatever, this imagined conversation, right? And he agrees, right? But he also doesn't exactly want to get divorced, you know? Like, at no point does he's not being tortured in this relationship because, you know,
he's the one doing the torture.
Yeah, he doesn't give a fuck, right?
What is he getting out of this relationship?
He gets to be with her. You know, he gets to hang out with her. He gets to hang out with this person that is perfect for the apocalypse, right? Because it's like, when you watch them talk about these things, right? Like, you can tell that there are very few people that both of them can find very few people in the world that can hang at this level, right?
Sure.
Like, when they're in bed talking about diplomatic shit and strategizing about all this shit, right? Like, he needs her advice too. Like,
for what?
No, for like, I think
for fun.
No, for fun and for probably for his old job, right? Like, she provided counsel,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
Odds are she didn't take her opinion that often, right? But there is a value in her presence, in like what she gives him. Like, he gets something. It just doesn't look very healthy. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, when he gets everything he needs, and when it isn't convenient for him to give, he doesn't. Right? Yeah. So of course he would still want to stay in the relationship.
There's someone to control and manipulate. Plus all the things you're saying.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, who else will kind of not let him, but like, who else could handle this level of meddling?
Yeah.
You know, like, who else?
Yeah, like,
can. It's almost like a game for him. He's like, it's like it feels...
she makes his world possible, right? She enables him in some weird fucked up way.
He's like, I want to play a game.
Yeah.
And then
she like by like, she doesn't let him fail. She doesn't let him crash and burn, because it's her job to not let him crash and burn.
Yeah.
Right? Like, again, these are all like this is just Afghanistan as a vague
Concept,
idea when they were there as when he was the ambassador.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah.
Yeah.
So then the question is, why doesn't she just leave? Right. So like in the show, right, she wants to get a divorce. This is a part of her personal life that, you know, he gets her set up in London and then he leaves and they get a divorce. They're sleeping in separate beds. They're not having sex. Right. And then this vice presidency thing comes up. Right. And all these people are trying to groom her to become the next vice president. And when Stuart, her right-hand man, finds out that they're getting a divorce, he's like, the vice president can't be divorced.
In some ways, leaving means she gets out of both types of being manipulated and abused.
Yeah,
right?
and both things that she doesn't want, right?
Yeah. She doesn't want.
Yeah, she says she doesn't want, but she wants, she wants to be the ambassador to Kabul. She wants to go to Afghanistan.
But she also can't give herself that job. She tries to she tries to quit being the ambassador to the UK, right?
UK, yeah.
And the president is like, you can't quit, it's pissing me off, right? And so she can't quit. And
she also tries to quit this path to the vice presidency.
That's true.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. And it feels like the marriage and everything is all tied together and it's all the same thing.
Right.
I mean, why doesn't she leave? The cruel thing to say is that I wonder if she knows how to leave. Like, that's actually the first thing that comes to my head. How, like, she doesn't know how to get what she wants because what she wants she can't have. She can't be like, I only want this ambassador to Kabul position. You can't demand that from the president, right? So she's getting something out of this career of managing the bullshit that these people are stirring up for her. And there's something very black and white, which tells me that it's not entirely true, which is that, like, the marriage and the job is so tied up. And I'm not saying that it isn't, but it feels like there are more ways that it can possibly all work, right? And it feels like if I were to say why, if I had to find a reason that she doesn't leave, is that as an ambassador to any country, if there's a conflict, your goal is also not to just bomb the conflict, like bomb the country, right? Your goal is trying to negotiate to a middle ground, right? I think the generous interpretation is that maybe Kate sees a possibility. Like, from the beginning of the show, Kate is kind of like, he's gonna get me settled and he's gonna go. We're not like, he's gonna leave, right? There is a possibility in which they are not together in the same place and she still gets to do her job, which is what she wanted going into the show. Yeah, what
she's been led to believe.
Yeah, that's what she's been led to believe. So she has this middle ground position where you're not completely bombing a country to pieces and going to war, but like having this like husband in name and trying to get a divorce, but also like, I can do my ambassador job here. And she wants the middle ground to have both.
Sure. But she doesn't want both. She wants the divorce. She just, as in, you're saying the middle ground is she wants to be able to get divorced without losing her job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like,
she knows her job in some ways more than she describes her marriage as a failure, right? The 10 years and like epic failure of my epic failure of my marriage. I didn't think that was a good thing to bring up to the president.
Yeah.
Right. I think in some ways she doesn't want to leave because she also doesn't want to fail.
Yeah, she did. I mean, yeah.
Right. She doesn't want to be the ambassador who fails at ambassadoring in her marriage. you know? There's something about like that relationship that feels like it is a sexist thing to want a woman to stay married in the position of a president, right? But the other thing that one of the reasons that isn't sexist that people think is that they can demand from a public figure is this idea that like, if you can manage a personal relationship well, that's a good indicator you can help us manage the relationship between our countries, right? Like there's like some implicate or just like general human feeling towards that.
I think it's like maybe even more just like literal.
Like what?
Right? Where it's like to get the divorce guarantees that she will not become vice president, which she wants. But to get the divorce guarantees that she will not have a job in the federal government.
Which she doesn't want.
I think. Right? She's
like stuck.
Like they won't send her to Kabul.
Yeah.
If she literally just called a press conference, right? If she does, what dudes, like what Trump does. Because what, like she's just like, she keeps being like, there's benefit in like the institutions. There's benefit in the like trusting the like culture and the proper ways of doing things, right? But while Hal is just like, fuck it, like if it isn't useful, why follow, right? Like Hal is like, go over the Secretary of State's head. Who gives a fuck, right? And
that's why she doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
That's why
that's why he doesn't have a job. But then she's just like, I can't do that because he's my fucking boss, and we have to like, fucking follow the order, right? But in the like, at least in that end of that episode 3, where she tries to quit the vice presidency and the ambassadorship and the marriage, and quitting both guarantees the other, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like getting out of this vice presidency thing allows her to get divorced. And getting divorced will not allow her to be vice president. But she'll lose, I think, any semblance of her job in general.
And like what she knows about herself. What she finds value in.
Yeah, and in the fact that she actually wants to get shit done.
Yeah.
Right? Like
that's like
and then that's what the cool thing about the vice presidency thing.
And what will break and the breaking your heart thing. Because I think in some ways Hal knows that what Kate really wants is actually to do the job.
Yeah.
And this marriage is this convenient thing to like keep her having her access to a job.
Yeah.
The job that they're giving her.
Yeah. Man, a lot of our episodes end on a very sad note.
Just the like in what's the English word, like 无奈 or it's like you're like,
it's like inevitable. It's like
you're caught. You're caught in this thing, and like but
that's the thing where it's like, from what I've understood from us talking about abusive relationships, is that in order to truly leave an abusive relationship, you have to, one, be willing to choose yourself, and to be willing to blow up everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why so many people, so many women don't leave abusive relationships is because it literally blows up your fucking life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, she's not willing to blow up her fucking life.
It's interesting because she tries to blow up her fucking life.
Yeah.
But it's like people don't let her, or like but she's not trying. She's not trying to the extent in which she could be trying. Like something in this dynamic is still serving her. Not saying abuse is serving her, but she is getting something.
I think
from this dynamic.
Yeah, Hal is this is why I think she loves him. right?
Because he shares his food with him.
Yeah,
With her in the morning.
yeah,
and
like he like makes her breakfast and like takes
makes
care of her, and
sure
it's like
she
very
eats.
yeah,
Yeah.
in this like very complicated, fucked up way.
Yeah. You know,
This is such a good show.
No. Okay. That is actually that eating scene.
Yeah.
So the eating scene is like, Stuart comes over for breakfast, and then Stuart
every morning
watches them do this thing where she's just like talking and doing shit and like not eating, and he just always leaves half of a thing for her to eat.
Yeah.
And so to make sure that she eats, right? Yeah. And that is actually the perfect image for what this marriage is doing and why she doesn't leave.
Yeah, yeah.
In some ways, she hasn't. In some like metaphorical way, she hasn't went to look at the menu and like picked her own food yet.
Yeah.
She's been eating like off. There's even that line like in the episode 2 or 3 of like she's being accused of eating off his plate.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like literally and in some ways metaphorically. It seems like she is eating off his plate because he made it so.
Yeah.
Right? But also there's a sustenance in that of like...
Yeah. Well, like, if she blows it all up,
she's gonna in her plate.
Yeah, she's gonna need to figure out how to fucking...
get food.
Put cream cheese on her own bagel.
Yeah.
Right? And she is too fucking busy to do that.
Yeah.